Well, it's interesting. At least 4 people came up during break and said, "Thank you for asking this question." So, the question of debt, the question of lack of financial trust. Are you
beginning to get it that as we talk with you about the subject of debt or the subject of abundance, that all we're going to do is activate you right where you are?
Yes, and I'd like to shift that. So you can go ahead and bust.
Then take us on a virtual reality.
Okay. Well, I have lots of dreams and desires, and one of them has been for probably my whole life to start a school that now I really understand practices what Abraham speaks of
now, if
freedom-seeking.
if you were to do a virtual reality about that, do you think that it would activate or deactivate your issue about money?
I can get really far in it, and then when I finally go, okay, now how am I going to do this? The only new part that's positive...
Then let's not go there.
Okay.
In other words, because virtual reality, and we know it's hard to hear because you come, you have this thing you really want, you have this thing that is troubling you, and you want to talk about this thing. And you've paid all this money and you've come all this distance, and Abraham doesn't want you to talk about that thing. Abraham wants you to talk about something that will allow you to allow that thing. But when you talk about that thing that isn't working, all you do is activate that thing that isn't working, and nothing changes except we've all had words.
Okay. Well, then.
And you are following that? In other words, the art of allowing, you see, this is the thing that you're not hearing yet, that we really want you to hear. You've asked already. You've asked for the money. You've asked for the abundance. You've asked and asked and asked. If it came in the proportion that you've asked for, you would have enough to keep you fantastically busy for 20 or 30 lifetimes. In other words, you have been asking and asking and asking, and Source Energy has been hearing and answering. So now, asking, talking about that, is not the answer to you, because that part of it is already done.
Can we go?
You're signed up. You have a standing order. Now what you've got to do is find some way of allowing. So here's the way it works. At first you just allow the money to flow by talking about tulips and dolphins and butterflies, or by talking about beaches or lovely experiences. At first you allow the abundance to flow by noticing beautiful people, by appreciating things that don't have anything to do with money. At first you allow the money to come by getting off the subject and getting into the place where you just feel good. Because just feeling good opens that door and allows the universe to begin. The universe has already yielded, but it allows you to begin letting in what the universe has yielded. Then, once you get that going, then it's really fun to turn your attention more to the specifics of the desire. In other words, it's wonderful to make a decision, but when you make a decision about something that you've already made a decision, in other words, you made the decision that you want more money. But our question to you, which decision is stronger? The decision that you want more money, or the decision that you don't have enough money?
Goes back and forth.
Which is stronger? The decision, and well, you know which is stronger. It does go back and forth, but one is more dominant. What you're living is more dominant. And so, that's why so continuing that is not going to help anything. So you've got to get off the subject. You've got to get off the subject of money. So as we do virtual realities and you say, I'm on a cruise ship, that activates money. As you say, well, I'm in my beautiful new car and I'm ripping across the desert, that activates money. So you have to be aware of what you're doing by choosing something that is pleasant, that doesn't activate the money where it is, because this is a virtual reality where we're going to give you some ease from that. In other words, we're going to try to get you to stop thinking what you've been thinking that hasn't been letting it in. Now, you have to get it that it wants in. You've summoned it. Source is sending it. It wants in. You've got to let it in. You've got to let it in. You have got to let it in. You've got to relax and let it in. You can let it in when you're appreciating. You can let it in when you're basking. You can let it in when you are loving. You can let it in when you're meditating. You can let it in any time that you're not letting it in. Very clever.
Sounds easy.
You can let it in any time you're not doing that thing you do that doesn't let it in. And what happens with these virtual realities, you begin to get sensitive of when you cross that line. When am I crossing the line and no longer letting it in? So now, take us somewhere. We can do this together, and everyone will benefit from it. And it doesn't matter if you don't make it the first 20 times. Let's reach for some places, and you all see if you can feel whether she's letting it in.
Oh, whoa.
No pressure here.
Yeah, no. Okay.
Just relax. They would all do the same and begin rambling in the artful way of just finding pleasure in the vision.
Okay, I have this magnificent studio.
Wait.
That's money again? Well, I want to get into this place where I'm doing art and music.
We know you do. But you've already been practicing that. So that's all right. That's what we said, 20 or 30, 100 times if we need to. It's all right. You're looking for something that you can feel good about that doesn't activate money. You see, are you getting the sense of what's been going wrong? Everything you think about reminds you of something that you don't have, which just causes you to practice a vibration, then you don't get there. But once you get the hang of this, it's easy. And the universal forces, because of law of attraction, things start shifting into place really, really fast once you get the hang of it. So
I should do something like just ride my bike or something that I already have that requires nothing.
Take a walk in the park, remember a pleasant meal, do anything that doesn't activate that discord, and you have to feel your way. There's no right or wrong in it. You have to feel your way there, and you're the best judge of whether you've done it or not. We just are here to help.
Okay, I'm going to take a picnic for the day, and I'm going to take my dog. And
now that was really smart of you.
Go to the lake, and I'm going to sit under the waterfall.
Now listen to the formula. Where am I going? What time of year is it? Okay. What time of day is it? Where's the sun in the sky? How does the air feel on my skin? Who else is with me? In other words, just sort of walk through it in that way, and you'll feel it. So, where are you at the lake?
Yeah, I'm in this beautiful mountain lake.
And what time of year is it?
Fall.
And what time of day is it?
It's about noon.
And what's the air like? What's the temperature and feel
kind of crisp and crispy on my skin, but just warm enough to be in short sleeves.
Yes.
Hanging on a nice granite rock and throwing rocks into the pond.
And who else is with you?
Oh, my kids and my lover is there. And
now wait, we want the dog.
That's right. All those people are problems. Okay. I want my monkey. I wish I could have a monkey.
Do you have a monkey?
No, I wish I would, but I know.
Don't bring the monkey that you don't have. Bring the dog.
I don't even have a dog. I just know I want one.
Which is more likely that you could get?
A dog.
So the dog is less resistant than the monkey.
Yeah.
So bring the dog.
Afraid so.
All right.
Okay.
So now, have you ever had a dog?
Actually, not me personally. Well, for a very brief time.
So you know, what's it like to be with a dog on a lake? In other words, what's the demeanor of this dog?
This dog's really curious, and it's always sniffing around everything, and it stays close to me. Maybe.
And is the dog joyful or worried?
Oh, totally joyful. Loves me, connects with me, but it's off doing
glad
its thing.
To be alive.
Yeah.
And as you watch the dog, you see power and health and clarity and joy. So watch that dog. Okay. And now your scene is almost over. You have about 4 more seconds. So what are you wanting to shout to the universe or to say to the dog about this moment in time where the air feels so wonderful and everything feels so good and the dog is so happy? What are you going to say? Life is good.
Life is fantastic when I get to be enthusiastic and just be my joy. Scene's over.
Now where?
New scene?
Doesn't matter. Do whatever you want. Your scene.
I'm going to go sit under a waterfall for about 4 hours.
Now just follow the formula. It's easier that way. So where are you?
Well, I'm at that same lake, actually. It's later in the day, and I'm going to wander around to where this creek is pouring in and go sit under the waterfall and just feel that water falling on my skin and soothing me and chilling me off. And I just would travel out of my body and have a wonderful time. Or I might stick around and watch the dog play.
All right, now where?
New one. I'm going to climb up the rocks that are behind this. I'm going to stay in the same place here. Going to climb up the rocks behind this, big boulders, and go all the way to the top.
That's not a bad idea because it's working for you. In other words, when you find something that's coming easier and easier, then stay there, milk it for all it's worth. That's good. Okay. So you're climbing the rocks.
Well, yeah, I love to climb and climb up really high and throw rocks in there and shout joyful things and sing when I know there's nobody around to hear me, and then decide to leap down. I'm going to leap down all the rocks and throw myself in the water and take a good swim across the lake.
Hey, see, this is the most productive thing you've done about allowing the dollars to flow. Because you've already made the decision. Step 1 was completed a long time ago. Mm-hmm. Step 2 has been completed a long time ago. And this was step 3. Mm-hmm. It's hard to hear. It's hard to understand that something that simple because you have trained yourself, you and almost everybody else, that you got to struggle your way in. And the thing that's interesting about that, you have focused and made things happen, but often you make things happen the hard way.
Yes.
And when there's an issue that you've been working on for a long, long time and it hasn't been coming, that means you've been practicing a vibration that you could practice for the rest of your life, and not anything is going to change in your experience. You got to shift something, and you just did. Okay. This is the recipe.
So just meander.
And then the next thing you're wanting to do is play in this happy place as often as you can, and then keep an eye out, an ear to the ground for evidence of it. Because right away, even as soon as today, small evidences will begin to flow into your experience. And when you spot one, stop and bask and acknowledge, this is a result of my shift. This is a result of my shift. This is a result of my shift. I wonder what else will be a result of, in other words, start sort of looking gently and softly for the evidence of your shift. And then a number of things begin happening. New thoughts come that are easier. New doors open. In other words, with that much work, it's like opening have you ever, as you were on the top of the mountain, have you ever started a little pebble rolling and at first sort of brush it, and before you know it, it's moving with huge momentum? Well, all we're doing now is just beginning to start it. And before you know it, the momentum of the laws, much greater than the law of gravity, will begin carrying you toward what you're wanting. It is powerful.
That'll be awesome. So with my day-to-day practice, besides doing that a lot more, or at all, when I have to pay bills twice a month and I don't look, should I just get a drink and have fun and get it over with?
Well,
ignore it?
Maybe paying your bills will continue to be a step one phase. In other words, if you don't have enough money, you're sure shooting out rockets that you want more.
That's
and
true.
As you're doing your best. Now, sometimes what you can do is play some games with it. In other words, make a columnar pad where you have several columns, each one representing a payment that you have to make, and put the biggest one on the left and the smallest one on the right, and don't put the total amount due, just put the monthly increments that are due. And then and make a decision, I'm going to do my best to meet all of my obligations, and then the ones that are smaller, that are over on the right, try to do even more than. In other words, if you say I'm going to pay 2 house payments, you're not going to do that. But if you say, I'm going to, this small charge card or whatever, I'm going to pay double on it, and are able to do that, then you can begin saying, not only am I doing what I said I would do, I'm doing double what I said I would do on some of them. And that really shifts your vibration. In other words, I'm so abundant, I'm doing twice what they're even asking. That a vibration like that with an action behind it goes a long, long way. However, continue to remember what we are saying, that there is step 1 and there is step 3. And don't try too hard to get step 3 happening with step 1. In other words, don't say to your friends, instead of going to the lake, I'm going to pay bills. I think they are equal in joy. In other words, they're not equal in joy. But don't struggle in it either. In other words, and don't be mad at yourself if you feel frustration over your money. But don't keep having virtual realities about it. In other words, how many hours a month do you think you actually have to go through that process? Maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours at the most. How many hours do you worry about it? Many, many more than that. And those are the virtual realities that we're talking about that aren't serving you, you see.
Okay.
Yes.
There's one specific in that. By Monday, I need to choose whether I've been accepted to this massage school, and I set off a strong rocket. Yes, I'm going to do this. Got accepted, and now it's like, well, I can't go in more debt. That's stupid. And so I'm sitting at that. My normal old self would be, well, I'm just going to have faith. It's going to work out. I'll do it. But my big debt makes me go, no, you better shape up and grow up and not do that.
Well, here is what we've noticed. If you can't afford it, don't do it.
Okay.
Because as you compound the thing that's already making you feel bad, you're just going to feel badder.
Yeah.
And you're doing just fine. In other words, it is something that is coming. We're certain that it will give you benefit, but the detriment will be greater than the benefit if you're not in the place where you can do it with ease. And sometimes we would give someone a different answer than that. In other words, we're giving this specific to you. We can feel that where you are, it would bother you more to do it. It would give you more reason to feel bad, and we wouldn't do it if we were standing in your physical shoes. We would line up our energy first, and you'll be amazed. In a week's time, enough could shift in the way you feel, and enough could shift in what you're allowing, that you might not feel the way you feel right now then. But there's no point. It's sort of like, as you stand in a place where you're not connected, and you make a decision from that place of not being connected, nothing can line up. Mm-hmm. Where if you could just wait a couple of days and get connected and then make even the same decision, then things line up.